Hey guys, and welcome to this week's episode of D3Live. So today I'm going to be talking about handheld game consoles and whether they actually have a place in the future. So of course, if you guys have missed it, a few days ago Nintendo announced that they will be really drastically slashing the price of their Nintendo 3DS. Now this is a bit of a surprise. Nintendo has always done well with handheld consoles. I mean, from the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, even the Nintendo DS, they all did tremendously well. They just sold them out just for years and years and years, and just made money hand over fist. However, with the 3DS, it seems like this really is not the case at all. Now, there are a lot of reasons why this may or may not be, and I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about some of them in my opinion right now. So, of course, I think the number one thing that really hurt the 3DS was the lack of games. Now, I think I can really speak from experience because I was excited about the 3DS. Before it came out, I was like really looking forward to it when they announced it and everything. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. 3D on a handheld, that sounds cool and everything. But then when they announced the launch lineup, what games will be launched on day one, I was like, there's nothing there I want. And to this day, there's one game that I would buy. If I bought a 3DS right now, I would buy Ocarina of Time, and that's it. And Ocarina of Time is a pretty old game. I already own that game on other systems. So there's not a whole lot of really great games that really pulled me in. So that's, I think, the number one problem with the 3DS and why it really hasn't done so well. Now the second thing is price. Now I think this is a little bit lesser of an extent. I mean, typically game consoles when they come out, they're going to be a little expensive, and as the time goes on, they'll slowly lower in price, get redesigns, all that kind of stuff. But how they've done this with just immediately 4 months into it, chopping $80 off the price. I think that's going to alleviate a lot of that. I don't really expect any more 3DS price cuts probably for quite some time, and I think that now that they've cut the price down to pretty much within DS levels. I mean, the DSi was $170 maybe a year or so ago. So I think the price they've really done a good job with. However, a bit of a bigger issue in my opinion is whether or not there's actually still room in the market for a dedicated handheld game console. Now, while again a few years ago, with the DS, with Game Boys and everything like that, there's no real competition. I mean, yeah, there's cell phones where you can play Snake, but not really any major competition compared to playing a full RPG or something on your Game Boy. However, these days there's a lot more competition in the form of smartphones. So, smartphones, in my opinion, are not as good for gaming as something like a 3DS or even something like the PS Vita. However, what they are good at is doing a lot more. So let's just take, for example, a 3DS versus something like an iPhone. So, of course, you only have so much room in your pocket. You don't want to be carrying around a 3DS, an iPhone, and this and that and this and that. So they're kind of competing a little bit. And just off the bat, just number one, you're going to look at it, you go, well, look at this. My iPhone has a better camera. It has mobile data, so I can get on the internet, check emails. Obviously, I can have a phone, and it has a little bit more different kinds of apps. So it's not just straight like a game or whatever. But you can do all kinds of other stuff. On top of that, with the iPhone, you have much cheaper games. So you might be able to get like Dead Space for 99 cents, or as opposed to that same console quality game on the 3DS with probably $20, $30, even $40. So I think that's a major problem with the 3DS, and that's one of the reasons why it's not doing so well in my opinion. So what I really think it comes down to is whether or not there's actually still room for a dedicated game console. I think that a lot of people, if you have a smartphone, really are just not going to carry around something like a Vita or something like a 3DS. I think what they really are going to have to focus on is people who just don't have smartphones, or really good games that just aren't available for smartphones. So for example, Mario games, Pokemon games, some of the really good franchises that Nintendo has, they need to hold on to those and really push them for the 3DS. Because, to be honest, even though the games generally are probably going to be a little bit better quality on the 3DS, I'm still probably going to rather play it on an iPhone or a smartphone or something, just because it's convenient, it's just good to have. So what they really need to do is focus on getting really good games that I'm just not going to be able to play on any other platform, and really try to amp up the the quality of both the 3DS as well as the Vita. Okay, so for the second segment of D3 Live, I'll be taking live questions from everyone in the chat. As always, every episode of D3 Live is filmed in front of a live audience. We've got quite a few people in the room right now, so let's go ahead and just take a few questions. Will the new 3DS price help sales? Yeah, definitely. I don't think there's any question about that. Now, while, like I said, in my opinion, I don't think $250 was an absolutely outrageous price. It definitely was a little bit expensive. I think a lot of the people were like, between that as well as, the really lack of good games, I think that kind of put a lot of people off. But now with the better price and with all kinds of new games, such as, Mario Kart and, Star Fox and all these kind of games that are going to be coming out soon, I definitely think it will help sales. Whether it'll be just a short term, like, a bump for a few months, or will actually, turn into good sales for, a long time, it remains to be seen. But yeah, I definitely think it will at least help some. Will Minecraft come out for the iOS devices? I'm not 100% sure. I do know that they are working on it for Android as well as on the Sony Xperia Play. But as far as whether they're going to be putting out on iPhones and everything anytime soon, I'm not 100% sure. I do know that they were talking about that I believe like earlier this year. But as far as any plans or when or anything like that, I really don't know. I haven't heard about it in quite a while. How has Cydia affected the portable gaming devices? Personally, I don't really think it has. I mean, I think some people still get emulators and stuff, but I think emulators are going to be on any console. I mean, emulators that's just kind of what happens on pretty much any device that can support it. So I don't really think it's really majorly affected anything. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't really think it's a big deal. Will the graphical processing of the phones reach the level of the console? Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, if you take a look at some of the recent phones and recent, processors and everything that have been coming out, it's getting really, really powerful. And that's one advantage that phones have over something like a 3DS or a Vita, is that when they come out, they're going to be coming out for 3, 4, 5 years, maybe even longer. And they really can't up the processing power or anything like that. It's going to be the same graphics, roughly. Of course, they can do small adjustments, but it's basically going to be about the same for the entire life of the console. Whereas with phones, there's going to be something new out every 6 months, and they're constantly going to be going up and up and up. It's very similar to how consoles versus PC. When a console comes out, it's out for 5 or 6 years, but computers, obviously, there's going to be new chips, new hardware that's going to constantly be raising it up. So yeah, I definitely think that phones will be surpassing the consoles before the end of the generation, probably within in the next year or two. Do I think that there will be 3D phones in the short future? Absolutely. There are several 3D phones on the market today, such as the HTC Evo 3D. As far as whether they're going to be mainstream, whether it's, all phones are going to have 3D displays, I'm not really totally convinced. I think a lot of people are kind of pushing back against 3D. It's kind of somewhat turning back into a gimmick. I know everyone was really excited, like, oh yeah, we're going to have 3D TVs, 3D phones, 3D tablets, 3D anything and everything. But a lot of people just aren't really satisfied with the 3D quality, with how well it looks. A lot of times you're going to need glasses and this and that. So I definitely think that 3D phones are not going to just disappear overnight. But whether they're actually going to be mainstream and every single phone in the next couple years is going to be 3D, I really don't think so. How long do you think the whole 3D craze will last? It's kind of hard to say. I mean, like I said, I think that it's starting to kind of cool off. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to get a 3D TV. I'm going to get, 3D this, 3D that. But a lot of people are like, oh, wait, I've got to wear glasses, or, oh, there's not a lot of content, or, this makes my eyes hurt. I mean, there's a lot of negatives to 3D right now. So, like I said, I don't really see it just going away. I mean, 3D's always been around. It's been around for, 50, 60 years. But as far as it really becoming mainstream and really, just this big hype of everything's 3D, I definitely think that's cooling off. I don't think we'll be seeing that for too much longer. Now that may change in the next couple years as they get better 3D displays that don't need glasses, that don't give you headaches, this and that. But for now, yeah, I don't really see any major 3D craze continuing for much longer. Anyway, guys, that's been about it for this episode of D3 Live. If you enjoyed, definitely be sure to hit the subscribe button, and that way you will be notified with all of my new videos as well as when I post new D3 Lives.